Three proposed resolutions moved by the Secretary for Labor and Welfare. First, motion under the Employees Compensation Ordinance. Second, motion under the Pneumoconiosis and Mesothelioma Compensation Ordinance. And third, motion under the Occupational Deafness Compensation Ordinance. Members have been informed that as the three motions seek to increase the amounts of a total of 18 compensation items under the relevant ordinances based on the established indicators and or the other relevant factors, this council will proceed to a joint debate on the motions and vote on them one by one. A joint debate now begins. Members who wish to speak, please press the request to speak button and now call upon the Secretary to speak on the three motions and move the first motion. Secretary. President, I move that the first resolution as printed on the agenda be passed to increase the amount of 9 compensation items under the ECO Employees Compensation Ordinance. I will also shortly be moving the second and third resolutions as printed on the agenda be passed to increase the amount of 5 compensation items under the Pneumoconiosis and Mesothelioma Compensation Ordinance (PMCO) and to increase the amounts of 4 compensation items under the Occupational Deafness Compensation Ordinance (ODCO) respectively. First, for the first proposed resolution, the purpose of this resolution is to increase the amounts of 9 compensation items under the ECO. The ECO provides for the payment of statutory compensation to injured employees and family members of deceased employees for injuries or deaths caused by accidents arising out of and in the course of employment or prescribed occupational diseases. According to the established mechanism, the levels of compensation under this ordinance and the other 2 ordinances are adjusted every 2 years where appropriate. Adjustments, if required, are generally made with reference to the wage movement or the price movement in the relevant period and having regard to other relevant factors. According to the information from the Census and Statistics Department, the nominal wage index and the consumer price index A recorded a cumulative increase of 5.8% and 4.5% respectively in 2022 and 2023. It proposed to increase the amounts of 5 compensation items under the ECO by 5.8% in line with the aforesaid wage movement as reflected by the nominal wage index. The proposed revisions include increasing the ceiling of the monthly earnings from calculating compensation for deaf and permanent total incapacity from $36,550 to $38,670. We also propose to increase the minimum amounts of compensation for deaf from $486,300 to $514,510 and for permanent total incapacity from $552,190 to $584,220. In addition, we propose that the maximum amount of compensation for employees injured at work who require the attention of another person be increased from $661,990 to $700,390. As for the surcharge on late payment of compensation, we propose to increase the minimum amount of surcharge imposed upon expiry of the payment period from $780 to $830 and the minimum amount of a further surcharge imposed 3 months after the expiry of the payment period from $1,580 to $1,670. At the same time, we propose to increase the amounts of 3 compensation items by 4.5% in line with the aforesaid price movement as reflected by CPIA. The proposed changes include increasing the maximum amount of funeral expenses from $94,690 to $98,950 and increasing the maximum payments to be made by an employer towards the cost of supplying and fitting a prosthesis or surgical appliance from $45,270 to $47,310 and towards the cost of the repair and renewal of a prosthesis or surgical appliance from $137,150 to $143,320. Furthermore, we propose to increase the amount of minimum monthly earnings specified in the ECO for the purpose of calculating periodic payments during work injury sick leave from $5,500 to $5,710 with reference to the relevant items provided under the CSSA scheme as at February 2024. For the second proposed resolution, President, I will now address the proposed increase of the amounts of 5 compensation items under PMCO. PMCO provides for the payment of compensation to persons and their family members in respect of incapacity or deaths resulting from pneumoconiosis and or mesothelioma. According to the established mechanism, we propose to increase the levels of compensation for 3 items under the PMCO by 4.5% according to the cumulative price movement as reflected by CPIA in 2022 and 2023. The proposed revisions include increasing the amount of compensation for bereavement from $238,530 to $249,260. As the minimum amount of compensation for death is pegged to the amount of compensation for bereavement, it will be adjusted automatically from $238,530 to $249,260 following the revision of the amount of compensation for bereavement. We also propose to increase the maximum amount of funeral expenses from $94,690 to $98,950. Furthermore, making reference to the existing minimum allowable monthly wage and food allowance for a foreign domestic helper working in Hong Kong, we propose to adjust upwards the monthly amount of compensation for care and attention from $5,930 to $6,230. As for the monthly amount of compensation for pain, suffering, and loss of amenities, PSLA under the PMCO, we have taken into account the uniqueness of pneumoconiosis and mesothelioma. Specifically, many of the patients are suffering from an increase of lung function loss with progression of the diseases, making them more prone to symptoms of shortness of breath, chest pain, and fatigue. These conditions affect the patient's daily routines or mobility and also exacerbate their pain, suffering, and loss of amenities. Therefore, in order to accord better protection to patients under the PMCO, we propose refining the pre-existing indicator from the average number of months patients receive compensation from being assessed to be suffering from the diseases till death in the past to referencing to the lower quartile of the number of months and apportioning the average PSLA award by the court in personal injury claims into monthly payments. Following this refinement, we propose adjusting upwards the monthly amount of compensation for PSLA from $5,780 to $10,770, representing an increase of 86.3%, such that the proportion of patients being able to receive the full amount of the average PSLA award of the court before passing away will be raised from about 50% to 75%. For the third proposed resolution, President, lastly, I will address the proposed increase of the amounts of 4 compensation items under the ODCO. The ODCO provides for the payment of compensation to persons who suffer from noise-induced deafness, OD persons, by reason of employment in the specified noisy occupations. According to the established mechanism, we propose to adjust the maximum and minimum sums for calculating the amount of compensation for permanent incapacity under the ODCO in accordance with the wage movement as reflected by the nominal wage index in 2022 and 2023, and with reference to the proposed adjustment in the ceiling of monthly earnings under the ECO. We propose to increase the amounts of these compensation items under the ODCO by 5.8% in line with the aforesaid wage movement and proposed increase in the ceiling of monthly earnings under the ECO. Specifically, we propose that the maximum sums for calculating the amount of compensation for permanent incapacity under the ODCO be adjusted upwards by 5.8% to $1.85616 million. $2.78424 million and $3.71232 million for employees of the respective age groups. As for the minimum sum for calculating the amount of compensation for permanent incapacity, we propose to increase the amount from $552,190 to $584,220. Moreover, under the ODCO, any person who has at any time been entitled to compensation for permanent incapacity may apply to the ODCB or Occupational Deafness Compensation Board for direct payment or reimbursement of expenses reasonably incurred in the acquisition, fitting, repair, or maintenance of hearing assistive devices (HADs), with a view to according sustainable protection for OD persons in terms of HADs. We propose to take into account the experience of ODCB in administering the HAD financing scheme for the adjustment of the financing limits. The proposed revisions include adjusting upwards the financing limit for first-time HAD applications by 4.2% from $24,000 to $25,000 to allow all OD persons to have appropriate choices of their first-time HADs. Separately, during 2022 to 2023, the average approved amount for HAD financing per applicant was $17,700. Taking into account the aforesaid average HAD expenses for an OD person, we propose to raise the aggregate financing limit for HADs by $17,700 or 18.1% from $98,060 to $115,760, such that those OD persons who have exhausted the aggregate financing limit can have their entitlement to the financial assistance revived, whereas those approaching the limit can continue their entitlement to the financial assistance. The Pneumoconiosis Compensation Fund Board and ODCB have supported the proposals regarding PMCO and ODCO. Labor Advisory Board has been consulted on the aforementioned proposals on the 3 ordinances. Members in attendance supported the proposals. The Legislative Council panel on manpower has also expressed support. We propose that the new levels of compensation should come into effect on 17th of April 2025. I hope that members will support and pass the 3 resolutions so as to enhance the protection for injured employees, sufferers of occupational diseases, and family members of employees or persons who die as a result of work injuries or occupational diseases as early as possible. Thank you, President. I now propose the question to you that the Secretary's first motion be passed.
Mr. Lam Chen Sing. Thank you, President. I speak in support of the government's proposal to increase the amount of compensation under the 3 resolutions so that employees can enjoy a greater protection. On the other hand, I'm worried that given the increase in the amount of compensation, the insurance premium may also go up. Some small and medium contractors may try to circumvent the law by not taking out insurance for their employees and ask their employees to be self-employed. I put an oral question earlier on. According to the government, there have been 22 construction incidents regarding bamboo scaffoldings, and some employees did not have insurance taken out for them. So I wonder if a lot of workers in the construction sector have not been covered by insurance. I think that we have to encourage insurance companies to offer more discounts, especially for those employers who have robust occupational health safety guidelines for their employees. If we look at the Occupational Deafness Compensation Board, their reserve amount to $600 million. So I think that we should cover more types of occupations. Say, for example, if there is medical certificate certifying occupational injuries or sickness, then they should be able to be covered. For mahjong school staff, DJs, they're not covered. We all want employers and employees to look after their occupational health. I wonder if the employers know they can apply for such compensation. I hope that the government will look into the matter. Loss of hearing capacity will lead to a loss of amenities. So I think that we should establish a fund for PSLA. Now, for PMCO, there is a $3.4 billion in balance. There has been increase in the amount of reserve. I think that there is room for us to offer more protection. Some patients are suffering from terminal illness. They have to rely on their family members to work part-time to support them. I think that the carers for these employees should obtain subsidy for, say, $2,000. We only have, say, 1,000 cases. The annual expenditure amount to only $30 million. I think that the fund will be able to support it. Schedule 2 of the ordinance have not been amended for some 12 years, and we don't have any new occupations covered. And I think that's not comprehensive enough. For workers who have to stand a long time, they suffer from various illnesses relating to bones, but they are not categorized as occupational injury, and these employees are not protected. So I think that the government should conduct a comprehensive review to include injury to lower body into occupational illness. I still speak in support of the 3 resolutions. Thank you. Mr. Dennis Leung. Thank you, President. I speak in support of the government's resolution. 3 ordinances are covered: the Employees Compensation Ordinance, PMCO, and ODCO. The content of the resolutions are to amend 18 compensation items. That's because the compensation amount have to adjust once every 2 years according to the law, and the extent of adjustment would have regards to the consumer price index or the change in the salary index. The government also look into other factors to make adjustment. We take reference from the adjustment in 2022 and 23. The accumulative change according to nominal wage index is positive. If we look at the CPIA, the adjustment is also plus 4.5%. This is a figure that this is a cumulative figure, so I think that we have to make adjustment because the wage index and the price index also rose in the past 2 years. For employees who suffer from occupational illness or those who passed away, as well as their families, should be able to obtain compensation as soon as possible so that they won't have their lives impacted too greatly. So I think that the government should enhance the awareness of employees' occupational safety and health so that they can work in an appropriate and healthy environment. I would like to appeal to the employers to abide by the law, to improve the tools that they offer to their employees, enhance supervision, to reduce the number of accidents to 0. By this, we can enhance our economy and benefit everyone in Hong Kong. I also appeal to the employees to protect themselves, wear safety gears to protect their hearing. For workers who work in polluting industries, they should also protect themselves. I hope that the government will look into employees' compensation and tell good stories of Hong Kong. I also speak in support of the 3 resolutions. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I can now call upon the Secretary for Labour and Welfare to reply, then the debate will come to a close. Secretary.
主席，
President, I thank very much Mr. Lam Chen Sing and Mr. Dennis Leung for expressing their views. I'll give a simple response. Employers, in accordance with the relevant labor legislation, should take out insurance for employees. For employees who do not take out insurance for their employees, they will be made accountable. As for the compensation limits, we have all along adopted the established mechanism to adjust the limits, and that will be the case in future as well. As for publicity, we have made use of different forms of media, such as TV programs, to advertise these limits. If necessary, employees may go with the law to get the compensation they are entitled to. As for occupational diseases, whether to list a particular disease as an occupational disease, we will have reference to the international practices and to see if there is a causal relationship between the work and the disease, whether there is medical evidence for such relationship. We will make reference to the definition of occupational diseases of the International Labour Organization with this. I implore members to support the 3 proposed resolutions so that for those affected by occupational diseases or suffer injury at work or death, they will be compensated. We now first vote on the Secretary's first motion.
請舉手。
Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. Secretary, you may move your second motion. President, I move that a second motion be passed. I propose the question to the Secretary's second motion be passed. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. Secretary, you may move your third motion. President, I move that my third motion be passed. I propose the question to you that the Secretary's third motion be passed. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed.